other than John, of course. And I'll keep an eye out on the chat. We will save questions. John, do you want to save them till the end or just as we go along?
Well, I'll have some breakpoints and I'll
Okay.
say, hey, any questions? And if you see it in the chat, just tell me and then I'll answer it and move on.
Sounds good. All right. Well,
Awesome.
thanks everybody for joining today. We are doing Control Your Data Lake with Databricks SQL Warehouse with the amazing John Miner. Thank you, John, for giving us your time of the day. Thank you all for joining us as well. You are also taking time off your day to come and learn with us for 1 hour, and we definitely appreciate that. We are recording the session. I will be uploading to the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel link is on the description of the meetup page as well. Data and AI Architecture Virtual Group. You can also search on YouTube, and we actually have now, I think we've done already like 10 sessions, which is great so far. For we started kind of like halfway through 2023, and we're going to close it out in a great way, and we already have scheduling for 2024 as well. All right, so without further ado, John, the stage is yours. Feel free to share your screen, and I will just be here in the background. If you need anything, just give a shout.
Awesome. If you want to go off video, I'm going to stay on video for about a minute or two, and then I'll go off video too to save some bandwidth. And we'll get into the presentation. And at the end, I will come back on video and we'll wrap up. Okay. So I'm going to show you some links. I've been an avid writer on MS SQL tips. So if you're curious, John Miner, MS SQL tips. There's a bunch of articles on Spark, and there's a bunch of articles, we were talking about Data Factory. There's also articles on Databricks. So this is the core services of a data engineer using Azure. Nothing, and I will put this in here in the actual link. This is the most important thing, is this is my community work page, okay? And so I'm gonna have to find where it is. Chat. I'm gonna paste this in. This has all the presentation works I've ever done. And if you go down to, just wanna do this. Of course, now when I'm talking, I can't find it, but it is out here somewhere. Let's do warehouse. There we go, Databricks SQL Warehouse. Can't read. There you go. And so what we're gonna do is, this is the presentation. Some images I have here. Data, right? We're going to talk about some CSV files. We're going to talk about some Parquet files. What's the difference between them? Just give you a spoiler alert. CSV files are considered weak files because they can be easily broken. Parquet, strong files because we don't have to worry about, hey, what data type it is, what's the column name, and can I break it, right? You can't. Going back, it's going to be the sales LT, so obviously that's AdventureWorks. And the code, I've dumped the code into just text files, okay? There's also a DBC, which is a backup. So if we're curious, we could go click the first file and we can actually see the code. And it kind of looks like the regular code that we'd see if we were using SQL Server, okay? To give you another hint is that if you haven't played with Azure, this is Azure, okay? It's called the portal. You log in. I'm logged in as CraftyDBA. And this is my MVP account. I'm a Microsoft MVP like Warner, hopefully year number 9. And there's a bunch of icons on my desktop. I just pinned these here to show you, hey, this is the type of stuff you might be using. Like, for instance, a workspace. And we definitely need a workspace to get the SQL Warehouse up and running. You probably need a service principal, and the service principal is just basically a app registration account that has a username and password, and then you can give it rights, okay? And that's how we like mount storage or get access to the storage, which is here. And this is the data lake storage you're going to be looking at. And optionally, maybe you want to do some analytics again, not so much for the data warehouse, but mainly for just in general logging, okay? So if we look at containers under this guy, and is it here? It might be this one. I'll have to double check when we get into it. Okay, so let's start the presentation. I am going to stop my camera and I think I got all the background information done and we can get right into it. So slideshow and hide the presenter view. Okay, cool. Still getting used to Windows 11, so I do apologize. I'm gonna see if this goes away, hopefully. Whoops, go back. I don't know why this goes away. Come on, minimize. There we go. I'll put it here. Excellent. So again, my name is John Miner. I am a data architect at Insight Digital Innovations. I've been here about 6 years, couple months. I came to Insight after leaving Microsoft. I was working at Microsoft for a couple of years as a TSP. I wanted to get back into consulting, okay? Consulting is really interesting. You get to help people and you get to learn a lot of new stuff and keep up the cutting edge stuff, right? And it may, be Microsoft stuff, or it could be Azure and AWS. So those are the three big players, and it depends on who gets the funding, like Warner and I were talking about, and the company. They might choose one of the cloud vendors, and sometimes you don't get a choice. The interesting thing is, unlike learning Synapse or learning Fabric, that is just a Microsoft tool. It's not ported to any other platform. Databricks is multi-platform, so it's available on all three. So purpose. Many companies are moving their workloads from on-premise to operational data stores in the cloud. Okay. And to get these data stores, like Delta Lake sometimes, or just Parquet files, whatever you choose to pick, right? Most people are using Spark processing as a data engineering tool. The problem is, what happens if you're an end user, a power user? You don't know anything about Python, you don't know Scala, you don't know R, you just know SQL. How can you, make them productive in this environment, in a Spark environment, right? And you might not know distributed processing concepts, right? So today we're going to talk about this exciting, offering from Databricks. I think it's been 3 or 4 years it's been out there, and it's called SQL Data Warehouse. It used to be SQL Analytics before. And again, every vendor tries to rename products, so you just have to keep track of what's today's name for the product. So Databricks SQL. Well, to talk about how fantastic, and again, this is what Warner and I were talking about, how fantastic Databricks is. They took something that was a Spark and made it look like a warehouse. And you know what? They did that to compete against Snowflake. And a lot of things you see here going to kind of look like Snowflake. So if you've done some Snowflake, then you're going to be like, oh, wow, I know what that is. So what is Spark? Okay. Usually, if you're doing any type of data engineering, you have to have some language you pick, okay? There's two primary languages out there, Python and Scala. The reason why I say Scala is because all the clusters that run in Spark are basically virtual machines with Java virtual JVMs run, okay? So it's Java virtual machine code there. So Scala is object-oriented Java. It just translates automatically. Python, there has to be some translation. And if you ever did any Spark work, there's really 4 pieces that you can work with. Data frames right here is used for basically manipulating data. Also, SQL interface can be used for that. Graph, that's solving problems like the traveling salesperson, which we try to find, hey, what's the best way to go from point A to point B through X number of cities, right? That's one solution for graph. Streaming, hey, we have the Internet of Things nowadays, and we have some telemetry from, say, my Maytag, washing machine. How do I get that information into, if I'm Maytag, and find out, oh yeah, we're having a problem with this product, right? And machine learning, right? Last but not least. And that's just solving those problems like, hey, how much is Microsoft stock going to be tomorrow? Or, hey, I'm a producer of lawnmowers. Is this lawnmower broken? Okay. So that's what you can use Spark for. The SQL Warehouse is just basically a place to put data in, okay? So it allows you to go ahead, create databases, create tables. You can actually use the copy into to do auto loading, okay? You can also load all this data in the warehouse using Hive, right? And then do queries off it using the data SQL Warehouse. So there's many different ways you can use this, okay? And I'll show you how. So Databricks has designed this interface to make basically the Spark ecosystem look like a data warehouse. So if we look at it, we're still going to, underneath the warehouse, have a medallions architecture, okay? And what do I mean by that? People use medallion to describe how quality changes from one zone to another. So bronze, right, if you're in Olympics, is third place, right? Well, that's where you get your raw data. And raw just comes in, but nothing else, right? And silver, that's second place, right? Well, we're getting better in quality, right? Now we filtered it, maybe threw out duplicates, cleaned it. Maybe we took John's addresses and updated it to a correct address. Maybe augmented it. Maybe we wanted to add to that address, hey, the population of the town that he's in, because we're curious, like, what's the potential of more sales in that town, right? And the gold, okay, sometimes called the curated zone, okay, can be either roll-ups aggregated for reporting, ML, or it could just be like maybe, changing the data so it's in a format for use in other tools, right? And that's why we have to the right over here 3 other tools, right? We have Power BI, we have Synapse, and we have Azure Data Explorer. So what is part of the SQL analytics, or data warehouse now they call it? In there, you can do a SQL editor, so we can do queries. We can look at, hey, what's the most recent query you executed and how long it took, right? We have dashboards and alerts, okay? And the interesting thing is, you might have heard this, even with Spark, photons, right? Why did they come up with the photon? And what they did is they rewrote how the engine processes, because they weren't getting fast enough execution times with Spark to make it look like a data warehouse, right? So they went ahead and rewrote some things to optimize it, and that's what basically Databricks SQL Warehouse uses. So the warehouse, right? What do we have? We have a SQL editor. It just allows us to look at the catalog. We have a workspace. This allows us to put code in, manage folders, and have dashboards, queries. We can look at, the executions, alerts. We can say, hey, if I see that there hasn't been a sale today, say I'm a sales manager for, and again, I'm going to go back to lawnmowers. MTD is a brand of lawnmower. I think they used to sell it at Home Depot. If I remember, I got one there a long time ago. So alert would be, hey, if we didn't get any sales today, maybe we need to alert the head salesperson, head of sales, say, hey, something's going on. We're not, people are not selling out there. Are we in a dry spot? And if so, how can we ramp up sales, right? And data, explore the catalog. Okay, but regardless, just like Spark, okay, the warehouse, okay, has to have some compute, right? The data is stored in storage. The compute is the warehouse, so we have to start it up, and basically there's an admin console that we can set parameters, okay? So our first example is going to say, okay, let's do something like the autos database. I have a sample database I created a long time ago, and autos is just basically going to create a schemas, tables. And what is a schema, right? You might say that is basically a database, okay? There's no correlation between a database and a schema. They're the same. Now, if you looked at SQL Server, you would have a database, a schema, okay, and a table. We can do tables and views, and we can only do DML statements, and we can do some integrity, okay? We'll talk about that. But what's interesting is we're missing here is you don't have any program, okay? There's no stored procedures, okay? So this is a great point. Did we get any questions, Warner, to ask?
Sorry,
No?
John. I was muted, but no,
No
we're
worries.
we're in the clear right now.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. I'm going to stop at like these examples and say, hey, if there's any questions, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into the demo. Thank you. And this is the very first code file we're going to go, basic features, okay? This, okay, is the Hive metastore, okay? And hopefully okay, guess what? My serverless. So this is the problem you always have is, guess what? Your serverless compute might actually go away, right? And so we can see that I had it started and it stopped again. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it. Okay, let's talk about compute, because this is a great place to stop, right? They have all-purpose compute, and this is just a cluster for Spark, and you can see they've kind of combined everything. When you first went to Databricks and you clicked on it, you could only see like data engineering, and these are all the data engineering tasks you could do. Like you have a workspace, that's where you store stuff, right? But then you would have like recent files, a catalog, which is you have catalog, workflows are your jobs, and some compute. And then they had the SQL, right? In the SQL, you had basically SQL editor, queries we talked about, dashboards, alerts, query history, and warehouses. And then we had machine learning, but now it's all combined, okay? Because you might want to create something, workflows to put the data into the warehouse, but then give then users the ability to query it, okay? So we can see these are the job computes. And again, the first two tabs are going to be related to data engineering up here. The third one, which we're really interested, is here, right? And we can see that if it's running, it'll have a check mark, okay? Now, there's a couple things you can do when you create a warehouse, okay? First is you can pick the size. Now, if you look at DBUs and you go to pricing, it'll tell you how much per hour you get charged, right? So if you go to Azure, right, US pricing, and then Databricks, right? You can see that right here, it just tells you, right? We were just there a minute ago. Where was it? Of course, it goes away, but right here. So standard tier, if we got the standard tier, it's 40 cents an hour to run it, right? All purpose compute, and that's DBUs per DBU, okay? So if we had 10, it'd be $4, right? And so on. So we got core, pro, and advanced, okay? So you can look at it. You can also get savings if you pre-purchase, okay? So let's go back to the example. Again, this is just like Snowflake. If you look at Snowflake, they have t-shirt sizes, right? So we pick a t-shirt size, boom. Also, you can give it a name. You can tell it when to auto stop, and you can scale it. Now, scaling is, guess what? Scaling out versus scaling up, right? So if we said 2 clusters, we'd have 2 times 80 DBUs, right? So 160. What's the difference between serverless pro and classic? Again, look it up the documentation. They keep on changing it. Pro says it has more features. Serverless means that, is it really serverless? And the answer is kind of. You know, when I think of serverless, there's no compute sitting there, and then you have to spin up the compute, right? And the way they implemented this in Databricks is that Databricks has a bunch of servers just sitting there that they own. And when you want to use it, you just grab a server that they have sitting there, a hot server. So that's why it comes up really quick. Okay. So I think I did enough of that. Pools, again, is about the regular and policies. Okay. So let's go back to the SQL editor and get into our first example. So what I was trying to do is, if we do not have a cluster or a warehouse, we cannot look at the Hive catalog. So we can see this, the Hive catalog. And we can also see that we have this auto, right? And then there's an Azure SQL DB. This is the one we're going to Azure Databricks SQL. That's what it is. So that's when we have Kara, we have all this stuff, right? So the very first thing is we can do a destructive call, right? And we can run selected or run them all. Now, the interesting thing, it's going to run it, submitting the query right now. Then it's going to come back. And again, hopefully it's not too slow. The problem with doing live demos is we just don't know how good the compute is. Like if Azure's having any issues, there's a lot of people wanting to do this at the same time. Did I not put enough warehouse power behind it? So it said submitting. Usually it's not this slow. So for some reason, it had some files it had to get rid of, and it finally did it. So it says, hey, the result is it executed, right? And you can also see that the number is returned 1 row. So that's the SQL editor. But if we go to queries, guess what? We can see our queries here. We go to query history, we can see, guess what? We just ran it, right? So if we show databases, it did drop schema. And when I clicked into the pane, it did a show databases, and it stopped it. So we can see the actual duration of the execution. So anyone have any questions? If I don't hear anything, I assume that's good.
Yep, all clear. Yep.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a schema, and that's basically a database, right? So we're going to describe the schema, and I am not using Unity Catalog. You can set this up at Unity Catalog. It's a bunch of extra work, and for the simple demo, I decided not to do that extra work, right? So create schema. cool thing is you can do a comment just like Oracle, and you can describe it. So if we run this, right, it's now going to put a new catalog in there, and we can say this is sample, and we can see this is a Databricks database. It's root right here. This is the Hive warehouse, and we can add it. So we can alter it and describe it again and say, hey, I want to set some properties. Cool thing is you can do tuples, right? So created by John Miner and create date whenever it was. Now this was at the beginning of the year I started talking about this, but we could change it, right? Our first table is going to be the continents table, right? So we're just going to create table and describe it. And so, and again, is this performance as good as Postgres? Is this performance good as SQL Server? The answer is no. This is an analytical tool, right? It's made for big data. You're dealing with, when we create a table, you're actually dealing with, see, we're creating a folder called continent. And it's a Delta file. And we can actually see extra properties here, right? It gives you like read a version, write a version, checkpoint, and so on. We're going to load the table. So it supports inserts, right? So I'm going to execute this. And we get 7 rows. We can show the data. And we can see we have Africa and we have Oceania, F. Where's Oceania? I think that is Australia. And then there's Antarctica, right? Unmute, I apologize. And so the we loaded the continent. We're going to do the cars by country next, right? So that's the second one. So if we bring it down here and we run this and describe it, we can see it created. It has data types here. That's cool, right? And we have the same catalog. You can tell this is managed. Managed tables, when you do it, it means that when you drop it, it goes away. Unmanaged means that when you drop it, it doesn't go away. The data is somewhere else. The only thing that you can do with the create table is a managed table. And so now we're going to go ahead and put some car data in. This is basically some random data from Wikipedia on cars. And it's cars production by country. So I think it says, for instance, if we do Australia, personal vehicles was 248,000, commercials was 26,000, total vehicles, add those two up. Was there a change in what continent it's associated with? So now we just have it. So we can do a simple join, right? Join A, bring in the continent name. We don't want anything else. B, so we're doing country, cars by country versus continent. Very simple query. Let's see if we get the results. We do. And the interesting thing, like Snowflake, is guess what? It does paging. So if we had hundreds of pages, we'd get them here. We'd probably not want to display them all. We can also create a view. Say I do this query all the time. I'm like, I just want to look at car data. Let's not call it cars by country and continents, but just car data, right? So we have a view now. Then we're creating it. We're going to select it, and we see it. Now let's hit refresh on this, right? And let's see what we've been working with. So ADB is here. And the interesting thing is, guess what? A view, okay, has the same properties as a table, right? See, it's the same level. And most, our DBMS do that, right? Other than the fact that, there's rules against views on inserting because there's 2 tables, okay? We can alter table and set some properties. So we can say created by and a date. And we can also comment on the table. So there's 2 ways. There's properties and comments, right? So if we do this and run this, we'll alter this too. Put in a comment here. And then let's see. So we have a table property, comment at the table, comment at the column, right? So now if we list the tables, it's going to show us all the tables, right? And we can see there's no property values here. So I just want to show you this command. If we describe that particular table, okay, we can see now that the comment came up on the column. And this is great for documentation. Even if you're doing Snowflake, and like Wanderer said, I've done this for Snowflake because, say you have a data governance tool and you want to grab data, it's a great place. We can show extended, right? And what show extended is going to do, it's going to give us more information, and we can go look, and now we can see that last access. Okay, it's created by John Minor here. See, created dates here. Okay. And what was the other one? We had the primary key. I don't see that here out of the comments. So basically, the main purpose of this whole demo, and again, I don't do this all the time for a living, is that I wanted to show you that you can put comments on the table. You can also put it on the column in the property on the properties, right? And the problem is, where do you see them, right? And there's 3 different commands, right? If you go ahead and you show tables, you won't see anything. If you describe the table, right, you'll see the actual column comment, right, but nothing else. If you do extended, right, we can see now that we have these 2 properties. I don't see the comment I put on here. And the last one, I think if we do this one, we get to see the table properties. So if we go all the way down, now we can see, okay, is there a column property? There's a comment here, right? And then again, I always forget this, scroll down. We can see we have this comment here, and this is our properties, and then we have a comment here. So the best one, if you want to go all 3, is to use describe table extended. Okay, enough of that. So in every database, when we set stuff up, we want to set up relations, right? Primary and foreign keys. Well, guess what? They're not supported, okay? So if we run it, it's going to fail. It's not supported Hive, right? You can get it, okay? Some of these properties with Unity catalog, it's not supported with the regular Hive catalog. How about a foreign key? Of course, we can't do primaries, but more than likely can't do that, okay? So let's say, hey, I want to go ahead and put check constraint on it. And guess what? Check constraints are supported. So again, foreign and primary keys only supported with Unity. Check the documentation on those. This one's supported when we have it. So we can say, hey, if it's between negative 100 and 100, then we're fine, right? So now let's do some changes. We're going to play around with CRUD statements. We're going to select star from across by country and say, hey, is there Greenland? And I know there's no Greenland. So we're going to add Greenland. And we don't know which continent it is. It's unknown. And so we'll put it here. And now we can say, okay, update, right? So if we go back to this guy and run this, we'll see it. Okay, and we can see the change percent is 0. So we're going to make the change percent 10. Run. Okay. And again, this is not blinding fast, but it does work. And you're basically manipulating, file structures underneath the hood, which is kind of cool. So now we can see it's 10. And last but not least, we can drop it. Okay. And then we go back here. Right. So now I demonstrated that CRUD works. The only thing that doesn't work with tables is basically some constraints, right? So let's make a new table called admissions, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this one out. I always flip-flop these during my presentation, so I'll put that one back there and put this one here. So we're going to create a table initially by itself, okay? Now, the interesting thing you might have not noticed is there's a generate always as identity. So this is our identity column, and it's auto-incrementing 1 by 1, right? So now we can put 2 values in and select, okay? And I'm not putting a value in for that identity column, right? So let's see what happens. Okay, so we can see that the missions ID became 1 and 2. Okay, that's cool. So now if we do a delete, we reinsert the rows. Okay. And then we run it again, we expect 3 and 4, right? Awesome. So now if I do a truncate table, followed by a select, should be no data. Now, if we rerun this again, we're expecting 1 and 2, right? Because, truncate tables in most RDBMSs resets the flag. And the interesting thing is it doesn't work. So the way that our auto increment is, it's tied to the table creation, okay? So the way around this, okay, is to go ahead and use the create or replace. So basically we're rebuilding the table from scratch. That's gonna force a new identity column, okay? Reset. So now if we can do this, we'll get 1 and 2. Okay, cool. So again, if you have any questions, please speak up. If not, I assume
We have a couple
everything.
now, John. We do have a
Awesome.
couple now. If you want to take a quick question break.
Sure.
So Bartosz is asking, from a CI/CD perspective, or from, let's say you make a change in dev and you added a column to a table and something like that, or modification like that, like a DDL modification.
Yep.
How does it impact prod? Does it require downtime? Can it just, everything works concurrently? I mean, I assume it doesn't matter if it's like a, not a busy warehouse, but if it's a busy environment that's getting hit 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
do you recommend people take a quick downtime to do a DDL change, or just, fire it
Good
up and
question. Good
under the
question.
covers it works with the multiple versions, or?
I'm gonna have to say that I have not really tried this in production. Okay, I have talked about this. I'd like this product. I haven't seen too many adopters with the product. Um, I'm thinking that, remember, this is all based upon assets, right? Atomic, consistent, independent, and durable. So there has to be a point in which no one's doing anything for a change to happen. So that means we need a schema locked, right? So you're going to have to take a downtime for this. That's not going to allow it until you do that. So no, it might be a great way to do it is you can have multiple workspaces, right? Point, okay, to, or even in the same workspace, but multiples. If you say, hey, I'm going to restrict everyone just to use SQL on this workspace here, that's my end users, right? Go in and stop the warehouse, and then you could make the change and then start the warehouse back up again. But the reason why I said multiples, because you could stop and lock everyone out of the compute on warehouse workspace 1 and make the change in workspace 2, and then start up workspace 1's warehouse, and you're fine. So I hope that answers it. Again, um, you just definitely need some time down because it is a file structure and there's a Hive catalog that needs to be updated.
As usual, apply some caution when doing anything like that. Um,
Definitely.
next one is, if there's no PKs or FKs, like what's the usual SOP or standard operating procedure here to defend integrity in the warehouse?
Yep. Yep. So you have, okay, that check constraint. So you can say, hey, make sure it's within these values, right? That's one way to do it. But again, as you know, Warner, right, this is not the only data warehouse product that doesn't have, constraints. If you look at it, many of the products out there, they don't support them. I mean, you can put a primary key on,
Yeah,
say,
they just
a
decorate it.
Snowflake,
Yeah,
but it's just sugar. It's saying, hey, it should be unique, but it doesn't guarantee it's
yeah, it's
unique.
just for
Therefore,
decoration.
exactly. So therefore, you just have to make sure your data warehouse is clean by using good ETL practices.
Bartosz is asking as well, is it fully supported ACID, or what is the scope of the atomicity?
Okay,
Um,
so I'm going to tell you from experience, and it depends on how fast you're trying to do this. Again, this is not an OLTP, but
mhm.
we've had processes we've written in past at Insight, and we found that if you try to do a update or a merge, which is might do an update, right, that you'll find that you might get contention on the actual Hive table. However, if you do append, there's never a contention point.
Yeah,
So if you're doing appends only to these tables, then yeah, you're not going to have any issues. But it does, worst comes to worst, it's like any practice, right? Worst comes to worst, you do a transaction, it fails, run the transaction again, it'll eventually work once the lock has been released.
And then we have Michelle joining us today as well. She says, is there any maintenance required on the underlying files if they're heavily updated? I think
Yep.
is
So
there
the
like a vacuum? I don't know, you know, in
yes,
Redshift
there
you
is
have
a
to
vacuum.
vacuum.
Yes, there is a vacuum. And so again, I haven't looked at the SQL syntax for it, but go ahead and look at Databricks SQL syntax, and it's probably in there. A lot of great questions.
Gotta vacuum your files every now and then, kids.
Exactly. But the question is how much data you want to keep, right? If you want to do vacuum zero, you lose any, history. If you want to go back in time, say 30 days, then vacuum 30, right? So again, it's discretionary by, the business purpose.
All right, cool. So that's all we got so far. Rock
Awesome.
and roll.
Awesome. That was great questions. Keep on bringing them up. So data lake files, I'm going to give you some background. So Azure Storage. This is built on Azure Storage, right? So all services have at least 3 copies, right? You can increase the storage by having a duplicate set in another geo. It's called geolocation. So unless you specify it, they're automatically paired sometimes. So like North American East might be paired with West. And again, I'm just giving you an example. Go ahead and look at the documentation. Okay. Access to storage. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because right now, so far we've used the data warehouse, but we're only using local storage. What happens if we want to use these files in our data lake, right? How do we get to them, right? And there's several ways to access Azure storage, right? Storage count keys. That's really dangerous because storage count keys, it's like the one ring. I just was watching the Lord of the Rings again with my wife last week for the heck of it. And once you have that one ring, you have total access, right? So access signature is a little better because now we can say, hey, you can only have read access. It's only for 30 days. Service principal is the best way. Okay, it basically gives you, app registration, which is a user ID and password, and you can give access to it. And it can only be used to access services remotely. You can't log in. Okay. So copying data. So the reason why I'm doing this is because this data warehouse you can do a copy into, but you still have to, something has to put the data up there, right? So say if you're a layman and you're creating this warehouse and you're like, oh, how do I do it, right? Well, there's a couple ways. You can use AZ copy. It's a command line utility. I love AZ copy because it even allows you to copy from one subscription to another. So if you have to do, copy from Warner's subscription to my subscription, as long as he gave me a shared access signature and I have another one on mine, I can do it, right? PowerShell. Also, this AZ copy is the underlying engine for Azure Storage Explorer, and that's like Windows Explorer, drag and drop. So you either upload or download. So that's really cool. You can also do it in PowerShell. So there's too many ways to get the data up there. You can use an ETL tool. A lot of old tools like SSIS have new functionality to copy to a data lake. You can use a new tool like ADF or Synapse and use hybrid approach to have some type of machine that's domain joined so you can copy from on-premise to the cloud. In short, you need to get data into the lake to actually make tables on it. Going to go over this really quickly, but everyone's using Gen 2 nowadays. Gen 1's been deprecated. The reason why we like Gen 2 is there's 2 levels of security, right? So first we have your ACL or IAM, whatever you want to call it, right? And I think Microsoft renamed it to IAM because, quote, Google had it, AWS had it, so they got sorry, not IAM, but RBAC. So role-based access security, and I'll show you where this is, used to be called that, now it's IAM. So that's your owner, reader, and writer, and hierarchical is your read, write, execute, just like Unix, okay? Cool thing, encryption at rest, encryption in transit, firewalls, and also you can block, you can say, hey, I'm not gonna want anyone to ever use a storage count key. You can stop that. You can also do same thing with the shared access signature, so you can make it really secure. So we talked about the quality zones. I'll go over this really quickly, but bronze, silver, and gold. And we talked about how data increases when we go from one to another. Cool thing is you can have stuff that's streaming in here. I did not see anything yet on streaming tables in the database syntax, but I know they're in the regular syntax. Maybe I need to do more research. Again, things change all the time, so I have to pay attention. Batch, you can just run it like once a day, or you can have near real time, every 5 minutes maybe. Very small types. So when you put data into the system, or you're going to create a virtual table on top of something, you want to pick a file type that is strong, not weak. So CSV problem is, guess what? Easily broken. Put in a comma, it breaks. Also, another problem is, guess what? If someone doesn't give me a file header, I don't know what the names are. Well, I have to start guessing, right? How about data types? Maybe the first column's SSN, but maybe in Canada it's alphanumerics versus in the United States, SSN, Social Security number, is a 10-digit number. Okay. Stick with the strong file types. There's 3 of them that Apache came out with. You can look at the details behind them. Most people go with Parquet because it's the foundation for Delta, and that's the default format for tables in general when you create them nowadays. Okay. The 3 types are Avro, ORC, ORC, and Parquet. Interesting binary. Already know the columns and types. Allows for compression, allows for partitioning. Okay. So I'm just going to show you how to do this. I'm not going to bring the files up because I already have them, but I just want to show you there are 3 ways to access it, right? Service principal, storage, credential, and signature. I'm going to show you where to put the information in, whoops, to do the data warehouse connectivity, okay? So hopefully, see, I got this too. Let me change that. That is, edit. Gonna change this to 60. And then start it. Okay, so that shouldn't keep on going away. Okay, so one of the things we need to do, and if I remember where it is, I think it's the admin settings. Yeah, right here. So under admin settings, and if you're an admin, you can get to it, you'll have these, right? Service principals and so on. And I don't have a service principal here, but we can go to warehouse settings. And in the warehouse, we can add a service principal. So we can see this is the same, and we can understand now the warehouse is definitely Spark because these are Spark's configuration settings. We can see that we're using OAuth, right? This is the actual client ID, okay? It's pulling from a secret, so our secret vault client password, okay? We're given the endpoint, so it's going to AWS Gen 2 2030, okay? And that's it. And so once that is configured and you'd hit add service principal and go through this, okay, it's fine. Now see this create secret scope. To create secret scopes, okay, you're going to have privileges to not only change Databricks as an owner, but you probably have elevated privileges for Key Vault, okay? And that's just from experience, okay? So now that we've talked about how to mount storage, I'm just going to poke at the storage. The question is, where did I put the data? It might be, I know there's some here, Parquet and CSV files. I don't know if I'm reusing this. We'll get into the demo and I'll find out because, like I said, I don't do this all the time. So let's look at a second demo. So second demo, data lake files. I just showed you how to do that. Third demo, we're actually going to start building stuff. So create from CSV file. So this is going to tell me where I need to go. Okay, so we can see it's on the Synapse CSV file. So I am doing the Synapse ones over here again. I do have a presentation on how to use serverless pools, so I'm just reusing the same data. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the Hive workspace, and again, we have to see this workspace is up. We have something to do. We have the EventWorks cascade. And so if we run this, we're going to drop and recreate it. So if we go into EventWorks 2, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tables. It's going to run this, and this is going to drop it. And then if it refreshes, this should be 0 tables, and there's no data. Awesome, so it does what we want. I'm gonna do one, and then I'll show you this, and then we'll do another one. So the thing is that we can drop the table if it exists, the currency table, and then we're going to do a create a table because we have it mounted with talent CSV and it's full, and then we can say, hey, this is a CSV file. Okay, now we have it, okay? So we have one table here. Now I'm gonna open up a question to the floor, just for the heck of it, to have a little fun here. Do you think I can do inserts in here or deletes? We showed you I can do deletes, but do you think I can do it on this table? I'm gonna create a new query, I'm gonna go a little off this, I'm gonna say delete. Let's do select star from, if I can type right, and I'm gonna drag this guy over, okay? Okay, and I'm gonna run this. So now it's gonna come back, and I'm gonna say, I wanna delete this guy, right? Oops.
Are you going off script now, John? Or you just
I am going a little off script, not too much. I just want to show you something that I think is important. If you haven't realized it, then I'm going to run the rest of it, okay? So I'm going to delete, run this. Ooh, why is that? It says you can't verify the permissions, but in reality, guess what? Anything that's not a delta table cannot be updated, okay? So that's the main thing I just wanted to show you, and that's the little sidebar from this. So even though we're creating these, we can't really do anything. I'm just gonna go all the way down and show you, hey, guess what? We're gonna create everything, okay? So I'm gonna go Control A, and I'm just gonna run it all, and we're gonna go back to this and talk about load patterns, right? Did I get to this? I don't think I did. So we're going to talk about loading tables. Stop this guy right here. Okay. So load patterns. Again, I already talked about this, but I'll just go over it quickly. Full load, drop the table, create a new table. We've been doing that. Incremental load. Incremental load means you have to have a data type that allows for changes, and that's the only delta table that's going to do that, okay? With that, we can load a small change, like a daily update every day, okay? Delta file. ACID. We talked about ACID, atomic, consistent, independent, and durable. It does enforce schema. You can say, hey, I don't want any schema drift, or I can merge schema, in which I get a new column that allows it. If I drop a column, it keeps the old one. Time travel. We talked about the vacuums, right? Once you vacuum 0, you have no time travel. By default, it just stays on there, and as a default setting in Spark, it tells you how many days. Just look it up. Snapshot isolation. Yes, there is blocked readers and writers. However, if you make a change, say like alter the hive table, guess what? You're going to need to get a lock. And if there's other people doing it, you're probably not going to be able to get the lock. But once you get the lock, you can make the change. All this is built on open source formats, right? They haven't open sourced, Delta Live tables yet, and I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. So, two types of tables. We showed you that the original type of table I did, okay, was a managed one because it was Delta. We delete the table, data goes away. Unmanaged tables can be regrouped by a common database scheme, okay? And so unmanaged, basically it keeps track of it, but guess what? It doesn't delete it. That's why when I get rid of this and rebuild it, I still have that data for, Synapse / SQL Data Warehouse because it's unmanaged. Okay, let's do something more interesting stuff. We're going to create AdventureWorks database from Parquet files using the copy into syntax. Now, the copy into syntax is really cool. It allows you to create a blank Delta file, and then remember I told you you can merge scheme. It allows you to merge them in. Okay. We also did the AdventureWorks for the CSV files. Those were unmanaged tables, okay? This copy, because it's a copy into syntax, is going to be in a managed table, okay? It's going to minimize this, and we're going to go to the next demo. Now, if we're curious, guess what? They all showed up here, right? And if we click on it, let's say, does this give me details? There we go. We can see this here, and So let's do a describe extended and see what happens on this one before I close this demo down. I want to show you something. This is it here. Wow, 2. Okay, so interesting. It's in the Hive metadata. This is the location table. Okay, we can see that this is pointing to a CSV file. And it's external, so that means when we drop it, it doesn't go away, okay? When we do the next demo, you're gonna see this is managed and it's internal, and it'll be a local file path. Discard, discard, discard. Okay, the next query is gonna show you how to create them from Parquet files, okay? So we're gonna do something similar. I'm going to run the very first view, just gonna drop and recreate the database. That's all it does. We showed you that before. But I'm going to show you that it'll be an empty database. Then we'll load one, we'll run the whole thing and do the slides again. Okay, so we're doing VentureWorks 1. No data, so it ran. Awesome. So this is a little different. So we're going to drop the table if exists, create a table if not exists using Delta. And guess what? We're doing silver, sales LT, Delta. Okay, so let's do this. Remove the table. Okay. Now, if we look, this is silver sales LT. So if we go back here, go up 1, say silver, there should be sales LT. We're doing currency. We can see that there's some data there, right? So now it says drop table if exist, right? And then create table if not exist in here. So it's going to create it. So for this demo, usually when I do things like this, we can just remove the whole thing and show you that it works. So let's go back to silver. Let's get rid of this guy, and I'm just going to hit delete. Keep my fingers crossed. There we go, it's gone. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create the table. And it's going to create that directory and subdirectory. Okay, and now if we look here and hit refresh, we get this directory, subdirectory. There's a Delta log here, but there's no data. We notice data files usually show up here, right? How do we get data files? We're going to say copy into, so it's going to copy data from one place to another, and we can run this copy into on a schedule so that it automatically auto loads, okay? And look up auto loading with Azure Data Warehouse, okay, or Azure Databricks SQL Warehouse, I mean, and you'll get the information on it. But the copy into allows us to copy from this path. It's a file Parquet, but since this exists already, we're going to merge schema equals true. So if we did this right now, okay, this is going to blow up because it's going to say, hey, trying to read does not have any columns. What are you trying to do? That's crazy, right? That's what's telling you. So now we're going to run this. And it's going to bring our currency data in. And it brought 105 rows in. If we select, we can see we have all our data. If we describe it, okay, if you remember right, it was on page 2. I want to do extended on this one. Hopefully that likes it at the end. I don't remember if it's the beginning and end. Yeah, it doesn't like it. What is it? I forget syntax sometimes, so that's why. Let's take a look. Describe table extended. Change this right there. Try this one. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. So now we can see this external. It's still external because we told it to put it there, right? So that's why it's external, but it's a Delta table though. See, Delta root. So now with this external file, because we told it was external when we built it and we copied from external, but it's a delta table. So now we can do updates if we wanted to it. Last thing is we're going to highlight this and recreate the whole example I showed you in the other one, but based off K files, and they're all going to be stored as delta. So if we hit refresh, we can see the tables coming slowly. I'm going to go back to this and talk about, we talked about the advanced topic. We're going to talk about other topics now. Awesome. So we talked about the basic RDBMS that we'd want in any type of warehouse, right? Now we want to talk about things that are different or unique to Databricks, okay? One thing is schedules. So you have that query board, but you can assign a schedule to a query now. It's kind of cool. So, and it can be multiple queries. It just tells it when to run. Dashboards. Dashboards are created to support visualizations. So the queries are there, and then you can make parameters to those queries, and you can use those in the dashboards. Last but not least, we talked about alerts, like, hey, if something happens, please notify me. We can do that too. So those are 3 features that are really kind of unique, okay, in Azure Data Warehouse. So we're going to do examples 5 through 8, view, visual, dashboard, and schedule. And this one's done, and we can see, it's relatively took 48 seconds. So it took a minute to load all that files. Not bad. So we're going to discard, close this one, discard. And I am going to open up the next query on the one, which is number 5, query table data. Okay. So we could use AdventureWorks when I usually load data. I always want to keep track of this. So we could write, a query, say, hey, look at yesterday's data by looking at the versioning versus today's. But just to look at it, we can see that if we do a union select, it's just going to give me every single table with table counts. And we can see that all the data was loaded. We can also create a view. So let's create a view that is for reporting, just kind of collates the data and says, hey, this is salary range. And basically doing internet sales, dim date on the order date key, product subcategory, customer, geography, and territory, okay? So I'm gonna bring all this up to here and create this view. And again, we said views kind of look like regular data. So if we go to our Hive meta store, AdventureWorks 1, we should have a report prepared data, which we do now. And then what we can do is we can use this view to do some simple aggregation, right? So we can say run selected, and for a given calendar year in a region, give me the total number of sales, okay, and the amount. And we can see the data comes up perfectly, okay? So now that we showed you how to do views, let's do something like number 6, which is visualizations. Let's put this in visuals. So to visualization, we're taking the same report data that we did calendar year region, quantity and amount. But no, what we're going to do now is we're going to give it a pick year. Pick year, double brackets, like JSON kind of, basically allows us to put this guy right here. And so now if we go ahead and we say go 2011, hit apply changes, okay, we're submitting it, and now we can see, hey, this is the results, right? And sales by region, here's our visual. So we convert it to a visual, okay? And we also have sales by mount. So this is our mounts, number of quantity versus these quantity versus amounts, right? So dollars versus number of bikes, right? We're doing. So how do we put that in a dashboard? Well, if we look at dashboards, right, we can have an AdventureWorks dashboard. And this is just based off what I just showed you, those 2 visuals. And now we can do something cool, okay? So we can put this and apply changes, and we can look at that 2010, which we didn't have too many sales. And we can see, yeah, we only had 2, and then 6, and then another 6. So not too many sales, and definitely not enough to make a living on, right? So 20 plus 15, 35, $40,000 of sales, okay? Any questions about how to create views, visuals, dashboards?
We have a couple of questions. I
Sure.
think let's do a couple of I think are shorter ones. So first is Ferris was asking if the you did the dim currency are the dot delta files Parquet, and it's just like they just have a dot delta extension, but you know behind this internally they are Parquet.
Well, let's hit a refresh. Hey, look, what do we have? Parquet, and it's actually compressed snappy. So
Yeah.
that's definitely it, and there's your log. So if you want to know more about this, I have and again, I'm not going to do too many plugs, but Benny Halen's my friend, and he's an author, and he just came out with a book called Delta Lake Up and Running. And if you want to learn more about the internals of the Delta Lake and Delta files, go read that book.
Cool. Then another one is, are there any from data warehousing perspective, huge advantages of Databricks in your opinion over using like a traditional RDBMS like SQL as a data warehouse?
The idea or the use case for this is that you currently have a Delta Lake, right? And that you have end users that can't query it, like they're not really proficient at, like they don't want to learn like PySpark. And so how do I, as a person, query the data and get some insights out of it? And the thing is that in this workspace right here, okay, when we go to the catalog, we don't have anything. This is loading because we're using the same thing, but it's the same one. But if we were doing data engineering, here's all our same Hive tables we see. When we go and give end users access to this, they can query all the data and all the engineering that your other teams are doing and get insights. So that's the reason behind this, is to use this for insights.
Yeah, and there's last one is if time permits, so we're kind of a bit over time, but I don't know how
Yep.
quick it would be. That can you show how to do Delta Live tables as materialized views? Maybe just a quick overview of the interface. I don't know if we have time to really go in depth here.
How about I do this? Yesterday, I was talking to another user group. I was talking to Christian Coates user group in
Oh
Montreal,
yeah,
and
Cote.
yeah, exactly. And we went over Delta Live tables. So also I have some videos. So at the end, I will show you a quick way. If you do John Miner, what's new in Databricks, right? You can see that's yesterday's one, and this was done about a month ago for the LA group. It was just posted recently. This one's here. I've done this topic a couple times, and I also done how to do Spark SQL with data engineering. So there's some videos out there. Just go look at them. This most recent one, I do go over Delta Live tables. Okay, and if you still have
Cool.
questions, reach out to me. So yeah, I know we're almost at time. We're a little over again because of questions, but let me try to wrap up and then we'll end up with the last ones. So say we want to alert on a query, right? Say, hey, guess what? We want to alert when something happens, right? Well, to do that, we need to create a schedule query, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new thing called mileage, right? And it's going to be associated. I'm going to insert into mileage, right? Basically account. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to say, hey, guess what? If this happens so many times, then, this is auto increment. We're going to just go ahead and say every 5, just give me alert. Nothing big, right? So we're going to schedule it, add schedule. And what I can do now is I can say, I can do every 1 and minute. So I'm going to run it every minute. And I'm going to hit create. So that's it. So it runs. And then if I want to see the first one, right, I can run this. Now this works because it has the create table if not exist. It's the first time, and then we're doing inserts. So now this runs, and hopefully we come back and we hit the first one, okay? So that's the query we're gonna schedule. It's, let's just save the changes, just save. So now remember it's scheduled. We can also see the schedule here. It'll be showing, hey, guess what? It'll come up on the schedule here, okay? Now the next thing is, going back to queries, is we want to do alert query. So the alert query is select case when mod 5 equals dense 1, or this is just a flag, a Boolean flag. That's all. It's come back with 1 or 0. It's going to run. It's going to come back with a 0. Okay. Now what we want to do on this is we want to do alerts. Okay. Now alerts are a whole different thing here. We're going to click this guy. Okay. This one, when alerting, is going to call John Miner and tell him, hey, something happened, right? And then what we want to do is we want to edit this, right? Trigger condition. What do I need to do? Enable this value equal to when result. Set equals. So this is not it. That's new. So now each time is evaluated, set notification used to follow endpoint. Okay, here's the problem. This is what I had to do. There's no schedule on this, right? So we want to run one every minute too. Okay, so create. And again, like I said, I don't do this all the time. So I saved it. And now we refresh and we can see if there's, so eventually this is going to alert me, okay? There was queries, any last queries? 9 alert query, that's it. So let's go into wrapping up on the presentation. There's a few things I want to talk about that are kind of advanced topics that you should at least have a working knowledge of, okay, to be successful. First and foremost, Unity catalogs out there. Why do you want the Unity catalog? Because we can have Division A in our company having a Databricks workspace, and it doesn't have to be the warehouse, it could be just regular engineering. And maybe that great data they want to share with database with, Division 2. Because maybe this is manufacturing, this is sales, right? And the Division 2, even though they don't make this product but sell it, resell it, they want to see what it is, right? Unity Catalog allows you to do something called delta sharing, which allows you to share tables, okay? Very important concept. And how does delta share work, right? This is exactly how it works. We have delta sharing, and we can say, hey, guess what? We can partner A can share with partner B, or partner C, non-Databricks customers can even use different tools to manage and get to the Unity catalog, okay? Table cloning, okay? One of the things we talked about is creating tables, but sometimes you might want to clone it. Say we have an upper environment, we want to bring it down to a low environment. There's 2 types of clones. There's a shallow clone. When we do a shallow clone, then guess what? We actually do a pointer to it. If we update the shallow clone, then it's going to copy over the data. Deep clone. Deep clone is just basically a copy, great for DR. Third-party products, okay? There's a lot of products out there. One of the things I talked about is like, how do we get data over? And, Warner might tell you, he's done some Snowflake. Fivetran's a great tool to do for Snowflake, right? It allows you to put, data from multiple RDMSs into staging tables, right? You can do the same thing with Fivetran going to just a Delta Lake, right? DBT, what is this? This is for moving schemas, right? Power BI, corporate engineering is Tableau. There's another tool out there called Hevo. I just put it out there. I've never used it. If you have, tell me your feedback. I'm curious. In a nutshell, right? Databricks support is for basic SQL queries only. There's no procedure-oriented queries not supported with the current versions, right? It's not supposed to replace advanced data engineering or graph or machine learning workloads that might be ready written in Python or PySpark, okay? Note, Databricks provides a simple experience, and this is what I got from someone who was answering a call on Stack Overflow, which I do sometimes, but they work for Databricks. Simple experience for SQL users who want to run quick ad hoc queries on their data lake, create multiple visuals. Now, the visuals are not stunning as Power BI, but they're okay. And build and share dashboards. If you don't like it, right, you can always copy into your data and then share it off to Power BI and suddenly do your own visuals. If you're curious, summary, the migration of data from on-premise and cloud will, continue in the future. Data lake architecture, there's a lot of it out there using Delta Lake, right? It's important to note that to get adoption by the existing employees to the new data lake is really important. And the SQL Warehouse is an interface that might get you that adoption, right? Unity Catalog allows for sharing, right? And that is important too. And in short, consider this, offering that for SQL users that need to work with the data lake, and then references, you get the usual. Databricks documentation, Spark SQL functions, Spark language, most important because those SQL functions are probably duplicated in Warehouse, how to create storage principles, Storage Explorer, secret scope, and that's it. So sorry it was a few minutes late, but I think we're wrapped up and ready for questions.
No worries. If anybody has any final questions, the chat is still open. I'm gonna, as soon as we're done the call, I'll stop the recording, and I will be uploading to YouTube as well. Right.
Thank you,
Thanks for
everyone.
thanks for everything, and thank you, John, for giving us your time and your knowledge today. And until next time, everybody, take care. Bye bye.
Look forward to seeing you at the MVP Summit. Hope we'll see you there.
We'll see. All right.
Have a wonderful holiday season, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
And Warner, he was asking what the channel is. Do you have the links for the
Yeah, if you go on
channel?
the meetup page, it's in the meetup page in the group description, as well as on the social links in the meetup page, or just search for Data and AI Architecture Virtual Group on YouTube, and you'll find the channel as well.
Awesome. Thanks again. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
everybody. Have a good one. Bye.